Welcome to the party. I'm Sam Ekstrom of Locked On Sports Minnesota. Today we establish a loser's punishment for the worst gambler on the show.
Yeah, speaking of, Luke Inman, Superior Sports Talk, ready to get back in the green with my gambling picks this week.
Yeah, Arif Hasan, Pro Football Network. Now I'll finally be motivated to stop losing.
Luke Braun still gallivanting in London, so this is our crew today on the Minnesota Football Party.
Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcast. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota Football Party. It's your guys hanging out talking next-level Vikings football. Plus the biggest names in Minnesota football for the Minnesota Football Party. And it starts now.
Welcome in. It's the Minnesota Football Party. I'm Sam Ekstrom. I'm on Twitter at Sam Ekstrom of The Ron Johnson Show and Locked On Sports Minnesota. Luke Inman of Superior Sports Talk with Reggie Wilson every day on Locked On Sports Minnesota. He's at Luke_Spinman. And Arif Hasan, fresh off his London sojourn, he's back at Arif Hasan NFL of Pro Football Network. Jet lag treating you pretty well, Arif. From the looks of it, you're looking healthy. You're looking awake today.
Yeah, it turns out if you don't sleep, jet lag doesn't matter. So I'm good.
It works.
You've been training your whole life logs like Christian Darris saw on the plane back there?
Yeah, and I was not a team liability to the rest on the JetBlue flight.
Should we just spend the whole show breaking down that 90 seconds of Kirk Cousins talking about Christian Darrisaw on the plane, wearing his chain, him snoring, he's obsessed with Darrisaw, like his stat on the scoreboard. It said that he was a first baseman in Little League. Just
the crime dog.
Very interested. Crime dog, CD.
Yeah, he loves it. And yeah, go ahead.
We also got quotes from other players on how deeply he was snoring. This must have been awful.
But just how empowered Kirk looked, and you could just tell, just having a good time talking about that chain there, man. I would love to see maybe in the offseason, the offensive line or something gets him a cool present like that.
His first time wearing jewelry ever, so that was a big moment for him.
They don't have jewelry at Kohl's?
He has a ring, right? I would imagine. Not all jewelry.
Right.
No, fair enough. Fair enough. I think he wears one of those rubber, athletic wedding rings.
I would count that as jewelry, though. I would count that as jewelry.
Okay. All right. Today on the Minnesota Football Party, Ron Johnson, of course, joins later for his Thursday appearance. We've got a fill-in-the-blank segment. We rank the top 4 most impressive Vikings so far this season, and we gamble. Luke Braun has shipped in his picks from England, where he remains and will return someday, maybe. And we might get a surprise call on the hotline here momentarily. I don't want to say who, and I don't want to say where they are, because knowing this person, it may or may not happen. But we start with the Vikings in the NFC. The Minnesota Vikings are the 2 seed, fellas. The 2 seed. Now, that doesn't mean home field anymore. It used to. It doesn't anymore. But where do the Minnesota Vikings stand in a thoroughly mediocre NFC where there really isn't any team that's running away from the pack except maybe the Philadelphia Eagles? So how do you stack up this Minnesota Vikings team, Luke, in a congested, very average conference so far?
Yeah, well, taking a step back, I look at the NFC North specifically so far. I think it's exactly where we had them before the season started. In fact, probably the entire division is playing out just like we thought it would, to be honest. Bears offense stinks, but they've stolen a couple wins thanks to a super soft schedule. Lions aren't winning, but they're fun to watch, getting more and more competitive. And Vikes just, I think they are who we thought they would be, winning games, competing with that roster Kwesi and KOC were given. I still think behind the Packers from a national expert standpoint, until people see Aaron Rodgers prove them wrong. I think Rodgers, it's hard not to be the favorite when you look at the Packers. But so far, Vikes staying stride for stride with them. And I think making it probably even a little bit more competitive race for the division specifically than maybe people would have imagined heading into the year. The NFC as a whole, though, we knew the AFC was the powerhouse. The NFC, probably a little bit lackluster. They're taking a step back from what we've seen and what we've been used to over the last decade. And I think you're seeing the teams like The Rams, who are the powerhouse, the Bucks, who are the powerhouse the last 2-3 years, they're regressing back to the mean a little bit too. So yeah, this conference is wide open. Vikes probably still in that second tier though right now, Sam. I think national experts want to see them prove how consistent they can be and how many good teams they can beat. Because when you look at the litmus tested, week one, they kind of caught the Packers, maybe still trying to find their stride. They were down 3 offensive linemen, but against the Eagles on Monday Night Football, obviously we know how that turned out. So wide open NFC this year for sure, but still probably in that second tier, but still right in the mix.
So regardless of record, Arif, who would you put above the Vikings at this point?
It kind of depends on health, right? So, for example, the Dallas Cowboys with Dak Prescott, I'd put above the Vikings, but with Cooper Rush, I wouldn't. I guess despite the history the Vikings have with Cooper Rush. But if we're going to take the teams currently as constructed, I would definitely obviously take the Eagles. I think I would take the Buccaneers with or without Godwin. Obviously, they're going to be a lot better with him. I would definitely take that 49ers team with Garoppolo. They're doing really well. And then after that, in the NFC, that becomes really difficult, right? A lot of people really like how Geno Smith is playing in Seattle. I just don't know if that complete team is one that I would take over the Vikings in a neutral environment. And hey, outside of week one, you might put Green Bay above Minnesota as well. I mean, they have not been playing lights out football like we're used to seeing, but I think they're a little bit of a better team, and they will be a better team kind of going forward. So that's kind of where you're at. And when you have so few teams to kind of put them definitively above, then yeah, I think it makes sense to think of the Vikings as a tier 2 team within the conference. But in my brain, I can only think, hey, this is a 3-1 team playing kind of like an 8-1 team. So to me, that's like a tier 3 just inherently. So I don't know. It's a weird conference.
It is a weird conference. I think that probably should give Vikings fans a little optimism that, we're really not that far off of the standard of play in our conference right now. We've been winning sloppily. So have the Giants. So have the Cowboys. So have the Packers. There's a lot of teams right now, and their fan bases and their podcasters on the Green Bay football party, they're talking about how unsustainable their method of winning is, and the Cowboys are saying the same thing on the Dallas football party, right? And the Vikings, I think, are right in that mix. The Eagles are the only team that's been really convincing about anything. I'd say the NFC West kind of cannibalizing itself, and the Rams not playing up to snuff. The 49ers obviously had the quarterback change early, and they might be kind of back where they were last year and maybe actually upgraded in that change. And then the Cardinals, you don't really know what to expect. So there are very few sure things in this conference, and it just strikes me, Luke, that this is going to be about treading water, staying alive, trying to stay kind of above your division, above the Packers, and then if you're healthy and if you can peak in December, that's when the elites will rise. If you can just basically survive until then and win the games you need to win.
Yeah, and I think that's why this first quarter of the season has been kind of best case scenario, because clearly they're not playing their best football. You're hoping this offense will start clicking. You're hoping Ed Donatel will start making a few adjustments and that defense will continue to get better. But we knew they probably wouldn't hit the ground running. But saying all that, they've still won some games. So winning the games you're supposed to, starting in the division with obviously games like this Sunday coming up, Bears, the Lions again, the Packers again. And then, maybe if you can steal one of these tough games, you've got Miami on the road. We'll see. Don't expect Tua to play. You got the Teddy revenge game factor going on at Buffalo. I believe that's week 11. A short week, Thanksgiving Thursday game against Bill Belichick. That's not going to be a gimme. So maybe stealing one of those games in there too. I think national experts, or when you look at the Vegas lines, don't expect you to win. You're right, treading water, but continuing to get better in both those phases, offensively and defensively, is going to be kind of the catalyst as far as how far they can go. Once you get into November and December.
Mm-hmm. I've got a little fill-in-the-blank game to play, but I just want to remind people that you can like, comment, and subscribe on this video. It helps other people find the show, and you can get all the Locked On Sports Minnesota content notified straight to you. Locked On Sports Minnesota has Ron Johnson, Superior Sports Talk, Minnesota Football Party, and the post-game postcasts. Myself and Luke Braun covering the Vikings there. And we are brought to you by betonline.net today, your number one source for football betting info this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles on every game you can find. NCAA football, NFL football, MLB playoffs, and the NBA regular season coming up. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events. BetOnline.net. Use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Vikings are favored by 7 against the Bears on Sunday. Over under 44. Our gambling segment also to come. But guys, how about some fill in the blank? I've got 3 prompts. Arif, you can start. If Justin Fields was your team's quarterback, you would be blank.
Terrified? I mean, not just because he's playing poorly, but because I've got no idea what to do with him, right? Because he clearly has been let down by the supporting cast of the Bears, and that's probably played a role in how poorly he's playing. So I have no idea what kind of quarterback he is, and uncertainty is scary to me.
Luke?
Yeah, terrified is probably the right word. I take a step back and I say, if Justin Fields was my quarterback, I would have surrounded him with as much offensive talent as I could. We know when Ryan Poles was brought in, they didn't do the Kwesi rebuild and keep a lot of core guys. They just stripped the whole thing down, bare bones and all. And the problem I have with that is the effect it's had on Justin Fields and his development specifically, because you mortgaged so much capital to move up and go get him into the top, 12. You gave away what would have been a top 10 pick this draft. Jets used on Garrett Wilson. I mean, how nice does that sound right now? But just zero talent around him. You've got a number 3 kind of wide receiver as your number 1. You got a 5th round pick starting at left tackle, and just not much to feel good about, I guess, if you're a Bears fan who's, they've accepted they're in rebuild mode. Like, that's fine, but hard to swallow what you're doing for Fields and his progression in the meantime. I think Traquan Brisker and Kyle Gordon could end up being really good players. I get that. But if it was me, I look at those offensive players they passed on, whether it's like a weapon like George Pickens or Alec Pierce, or even just better protection like Cam Jurgens, who Philly picked in the 2nd round, Luke Gadecki. I just would have done everything I could have to help his development by surrounding him with weapons earlier rather than building that defense first like they've done.
Yeah, the Bears are in a weird spot. Like, if you compare them to the Lions kind of had the stopgap quarterback to just kind of keep the seat warm while they rebuilt around him. They've got the young quarterback, and they're going to get to a point where they rebuilt so hard that they just don't know what they have in the quarterback until the rebuild is into Fields' 3rd year. My fill in the blank, if Justin Fields was my quarterback, I would be clinging to the Jalen Hurts trajectory. Jalen Hurts, terrible in his first-year debut, 52% passer, then up to 61% in his 2nd year, and they figured out how to use his legs. And then they got weapons around him in the 3rd year. So if this is the year where they figure out how to use Justin Fields physically and maybe start to see some improvement in the passing toward the end of the year, then they invest in the weapons in year 3. Maybe, just maybe, he can be on that Jalen Hurts trajectory, because for Hurts, it was a very linear progression from year 1 to year 2 to year 3, and here we are. They're the best in the NFC. I'm not saying Justin Fields is that, but I'm saying if I was a fan of the Bears, that would be the only way I could sleep at night, is if I could look at these other year 3 quarterbacks and say, okay, we're not completely toast, but we probably are. I mean, let's be honest. Fill in the blank, prompt number 2. If Ed Ingram is the best draft pick so far in 2022 for the Vikings, the 2nd best draft pick is Luke Inman?
Probably a Caleb Evans. I mean, he's played the most, so him by default, but Brian Asamoah's been really good on special teams. I still think once he gets in, maybe some packages or 3rd down looks, he'll be fun to watch. In the end, though, I still think when it's all said and done, Boot Jr.'s the most talented. If he can just stay healthy, I think he'll be hands down the best of the bunch. Hopefully we see him suit up this week versus the Bears. But don't forget about Ryan Wright now. He's been a sneaky rookie for them too. Reggie brought him up on the Superior Sports talk show today.
Yeah.
And just the guts, it takes to cut the veteran Jordan Berry. You roll with the rookie. Matt Daniels looking like a genius right now. Don't forget about Ryan Wright. He's been good too.
Find a significant other who loves you the way Luke loves Andrew Booth Jr. I mean, seriously.
Honestly.
He's a fan.
I love him.
Yeah. Planted his flag.
I love him.
For me, it's so tough for me to say Ed Ingram is the best draft pick even. right? like obviously he's seeing the field really consistently, which no one else is in that draft class, but he's playing so poorly that honestly, like it may have been better to draft a worse player so the Vikings wouldn't have been motivated to trade Jesse Davis, right? Like maybe he would have been in a better spot. But if we assume that the guy getting all the snaps is a great pick, and if we kind of exclude Lewis Cine from the equation because of what happened, I'm gonna say that rookie year it's a Caleb Evans, but I think that from what we've seen so far in terms of where they could go, I'm going to agree with Luke. I think Andrew Booth Jr. Is the best overall draft pick for kind of the next couple of years. But in terms of what we've seen thus far and their performance, I'm going to go with the Caleb Evans, who's actually been all right in kind of the limited defensive snaps that he's had.
Has he? 5 receptions, 32 coverage snaps? I don't know, Arif. I'm just trying to be...
Statistically, it's not great, but, you were defending, what's his name, Cameron Dancer, right? Statistically, it was... Pro Football Focus loved him, right? Just in terms of the grade, but the grade and the stats don't always line up.
Yeah, I was just going to contest you because I didn't want to get tricked into going with the Caleb Evans because of recency bias. I think Brian Asamoah is the right answer. Like, he looks like he's got the most raw talent easily, looked amazing in the preseason, and feels like he's fairly underutilized at this point, which leads me to my final fill in the blank. The most underutilized Viking is who? Arif, who is it?
It's got to be Jalen Naylor, right? What's it, 20 yards per target? No.
Yards per route run, off the charts.
Jalen Naylor ratio. Come on, bring it in. Mike Tice, bring it in.
I guess if I were to pick a guy, it would be fun if the answer was Jalen Reagor. I don't think that that's the case. I think you could make a pretty good case for somebody like Brian Asamoah, given how Jordan Hicks is playing. But I think it might be Kene Nwangwu. I want to see more of that explosive running that you can get from having these 4-2, 4-3 running backs on the field, especially now that Dalvin Cook is a little banged up. I guess he's not on the injury report, but we know the deal.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that you brought him up. I think we're still all waiting for, KOC to start sprinkling some of these other running backs in different packages. You brought up Brian Asamoah. Again, I'd like to see him maybe third downs or sub packages. I think Jordan Hicks is, as good as he is at tackling, maybe on first, second down, somewhat of a liability in coverage. I think that's fair to say thus far. And I just think Asamoah, you called it out, Sam, the speed coming out of Oklahoma was why you like this guy, why you moved up and drafted him. Getting more speed on the field, especially on third down, try to get him in the backfield, get after the passer. I think we're all ready to see it. KJ Osborne would be another one for me. As much as 11 personnel that they run, we haven't really seen that 5-6 target game for Osborne yet. He's came up clutch a few times for them. We know what he can do, but what about the other 3.5 quarters? I'd like to see them exploit that extra attention on JJ a little bit more and give KJ some more looks on those chunk plays downfield, because I think the looks are there. I think he's been doing a good job of getting open.
Good answers, good answers. It's time for Sam to draw a picture. So this is the number of offensive snaps that Kene has played this year. You see that?
Oh, so by default, I'm right. Okay.
Do I need to turn it?
What is that, a tire?
So it sounds like he's extremely underutilized. Wow. Incredible.
0 offensive snaps in 4 weeks. I could live with it if it was 5, if they found a couple of gadget plays for him, if it was 10, if he was just on the field for 2 series.
Yeah.
0?
Or if, Dalvin had been more productive, it'd be easier to say, well, I got to roll with the high hand.
Yeah, that's like part of it too. Right, yeah.
But Dalvin just, has I think his most explosive play of the season, we talked about this today on the Spears Sports Show, 16 yards. He's only caught 47 receiving yards, so he's only averaging as many looks as he's getting in the passing game. He's averaging like 10 yards receiving per game too. So we know he's that kind of boomer bust runner. You wait for him to just bust that long one. Obviously, he got tripped up, should have been a penalty versus the Saints, but still, your longest, most explosive play of the season is only 16 yards. All the more reason to start seeing guys like Kene Nwangwu and Madison, and maybe even Ty Chandler. But I'm glad you guys went with Kene. That was a good one.
Let's do a little rank 'em. Let's rank the most impressive Vikings so far this season, because I'm not sure it's the usual suspects. I'm not sure it's a Kendricks or a Harrison Smith or a Daniil Hunter, Kirk Cousins. Like, I think that there are some kind of unsung heroes in this mix. I'm curious if you guys could just gut reaction. Give me number one on your list. Who would it be?
I think we'll all roll with JJ number one, right? And then, 2, 3, and 4. Top of my head, I think Christian Darrisaw needs to be in there. I'll go with him. Number 2, Dalvin Tomlinson and Harrison Phillips, maybe 3 and 4. I mean, these trenches have been so good. This offensive line may be the best unit of the team thus far. And obviously, Brian O'Neill, maybe an honorable mention for me, would be number 5. But JJ, Darrisaw, Dalvin, and Harrison Phillips would be my top 4.
Yeah. I mean, I think JJ's in the top 4, but on the JJ curve, like, is he number 1 would be my question. He's definitely in the top.
Oh yeah, if we're adjusting for like our internal expectations of who the player is, yeah, I mean JJ would not end up being number 1 because we expect him to get like 100 yards every game, and he's only done that two of these games. He's only like
he's only influenced 2 games in a major way.
Yeah, but I mean, if we're doing that, I mean, Christian Darrisaw, I think, is at the top of that list. I mean, the way that he's played, especially because they split him out on his own, right? Like when you watch, the end zone view, he's like actually on an island sometimes against these edge rushers. You get to no help, and he's doing a pretty fantastic job. I think Dalvin Tomlinson, again, controlling for internal expectations, like Luke said, is up there. He's been doing a little bit more rushing the passer than I think a lot of us expected, especially against. I know this sounds like complimenting with or damning with faint praise, but genuinely, when he sees a below average guard, he wrecks them. Right? It's just it's so fun. It's like that's a really good litmus test. Above that, he's a pretty good player, but he doesn't like absolutely dominate. And then I think Cameron Dancer. I wish he didn't make so many mistakes because his good plays are so good.
You wish he would have held on to that interception too. It just would have been easier to kind of get back behind him a little bit more. But you're right, just up and down. But when it's good, it's great. And then when it's bad, it's just like, man, I don't know how long.
And then Ryan Wright. Put Ryan Wright on that list. Ryan
Wright is a sneaky entry.
Love it.
Sneaky entry. Yeah, he's 9th PFF punter, 4th in net punt yardage. He had a pass completion. Right. He's got he's 3rd in inside the 20. Yeah, his hang time is top 10. He's been really good. I love Ryan Wright. Dalvin Tomlinson, 10th ranked defensive tackle on PFF, seems to take to the 3-4. Darrisaw I had. He's the 8th PFF tackle, and he's allowed no sacks. And check out the top 5 in receiving yards, too. I mean, usually the guys you expect, there's not always, direct correlation between the top receivers in football and the top, guys in yards. Look at the top 5. Tyreek, Diggs, Brown, Kupp, and Jefferson. Exactly who you would expect. I think Devontae is 7. Yeah. It's just a who's who of who's good. So, did we disagree at all? It's Dalvin, it's Wright, it's Darrisaw, it's Jefferson. Anyone else going to enter that top 4?
I think they're kind of the clear cut. Again, Brian O'Neill, maybe honorable mention there. But and Ryan Wright, it's fun. But no, I think we're all in agreement there. Yeah.
Yeah. It kind of tells me that there's not that many big performers on this Vikings team so far. No one has blown you away. They're either playing to your low expectations, or they're maybe underachieving your high expectations, but no one is stepping up and standing out on this team. And I don't know whether that's a concern because it means that will sustain, or are they due? Is somebody due to emerge? And I don't know what is realistic as an observer to expect from this team. The law of averages would suggest that there are some performers that are due to make, Eric Kendricks is probably due for a big game. Harrison Smith, probably due for a big game. Daniil Hunter is just sitting on a huge football game. The Vikings need that. They need some guys to, wreck and influence these final scores because they're not going to be able to come back every fourth quarter. And it's just not going to happen unless Captain Clutch, Kirk Cousins, can do this every single week. And who am I to underestimate him? Locked On Sports Minnesota is your home for Minnesota sports, endless Vikings talk with local experts. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or subscribe on YouTube for all of our shows. It is free and available. And we are brought to you today as well by Built Bar. I just got a new box, and I am loving it. Whenever I need a little pick-me-up, grab a Built Bar. They are good and good for you. Only 160 calories and about 15 grams of protein. I'm especially a big fan of the cookie dough chunk puffs. If you don't have these, you're missing out. You're depriving yourself because they are so good and indulgent and delicious, covered in 100% real chocolate. And they're made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. Yes, indeed, Built has done it again. Head to Built.com right now. Use promo code LOCKEDON15. Built.com, promo code LOCKEDON15. Get 15% off your order. Promo code LOCKEDON15. Ron Johnson around the corner. How about before we talk to Ron, who has a nerdy stat of the day? Do we have a graphic for that? No, we don't. Not yet. We will someday. Nerdy stats. I'd like to, if I could, if you have it, could you give me a nerdy stat that tells me how bad the Bears are on offense? I'd like a Bears.
I got one.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it goes to Justin Fields, right? This is kind of the focal point of the Bears team and the Bears offense right now. Knock on Fields coming out was he held on to the ball too long in college. You're kind of seeing that carry over, obviously, thus far. His average time it takes him to throw the ball well above league average right now. He's got the most sacks taken in the NFL right now with 11 when the opposing D line doesn't have a positive pass rush win rate, which means even when the O-line's doing their job, he's taken way too many sacks. He's tied for second in the league with most sacks with 16. And I think it boils down to like how much of this is on the coordinator, the head coach, because remember, everybody blamed the old regime and staff, but it feels like much of the same even with the new staff. Or is it just there's not enough talent right now? And in the NFL, you still need talent at the end of the day to win. You need those playmakers, those X factors, because Chicago's wide receivers, check this out, averaging the 5th most yards of separation in the NFL. So you can't just say it's because guys aren't getting open either.
That's good. That was nerdy. Nice job, Luke. Arif, what do you got?
That was the nerdiest stat I've ever seen Luke put together. I'm really proud of him. That was really incredible work.
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah, I wish I could beat it this week, but I mean, the student has become the master. No, my nerdy stat, also related, of course, to Justin Fields, has to do with what NFL Next Gen Stats does with their completion rate above expected. So what they do is they determine the likelihood of a completion based on a number of factors, the most important of which is how far downfield a throw is, but they also take into account how close to the sideline that throw is. They take into account on whether or not the quarterback is being pressured. They take into account how close the nearest defender or defenders are. They take into account down and distance. They take into account all of these factors using their excellent tracking data to determine how likely it is that someone's going to be able to make a throw or make a completion. And wouldn't you know it, in terms of above or below the expected completion rate, Justin Fields ranks last in the NFL. So even if you take into account the fact that they're under pressure a lot, maybe Justin Fields is holding onto the ball for a good reason. Now, Luke says that, we've got some pretty good evidence that those receivers are getting open, so maybe he's not actually holding onto the ball for a good reason. But in a world where he is, in a world where he's holding onto the ball for a good reason, right? Maybe people aren't getting open. In a world where he's under a ton of pressure every snap, which is not really the case. In a world where he's throwing too far downfield to be consistently making completions, which is not really the case. Even after we account for all of those factors, he's just not making completions. There is nothing there that tells us that he can consistently complete those passes, which might be why, despite being, a quarterback that is among the league leaders in snaps taken, has some of the lowest passing yardage we've ever seen for a starting quarterback over the past decade through 4 games. The Bears just don't want him to throw the ball, and I can see why.
So mine is around my favorite thing to gripe about in football, the second and long run, which was a special of the Kubiak offenses.
Mm-hmm.
The Bears have 21 such runs this season. That is second and 10 or longer. For reference,
my understanding,
the Vikings have... Yep.
Sorry, my understanding is that they have never thrown the ball on 2nd and 10. They've only run the ball.
Wow.
Like ever? Not once?
Well, this year. But yeah, that's my understanding based off of looking at the charts. Yeah.
Wow. If you can stat head that before the show is over, that'd be fascinating to see. The Bears lead the league by far in second and long runs. The Vikings have 10. The Bears have more than twice that. Not only that, but the next closest team to the Bears has 15. So the Bears have run it an astounding amount on second and 10, which, as I've written about, I've talked about many times, you're basically setting your offense up for a third and medium to long. Like, best case scenario, typically you are accepting the fact that you're going to have a third and medium. You're going to allow the other team to pass rush. You're going to be one-dimensional. The other team's going to know you're going to pass, basically, in most cases. Really frustrating to see that when the Vikings do it and the Bears are doing it more than twice as often. That is how bad the Bears' offense has been. All right, let's hear it.
So they have actually thrown the ball, but I was able to look at pass frequency over expected. They are under pass frequency for every single down and distance in the NFL by 8% or more. By down and distance by 10% or more. On second and short, they've never thrown the ball. That was my mistake. They've only run the ball on second and short when it's actually the most advantageous down
That's
to
bad
pass
too.
it.
Yep.
Yeah, so they are minus 30% compared to the rest of the NFL on both second and short and second and long when it comes to likelihood of throwing or passing.
Brutal.
Yeah.
Now,
brutal.
I guess if there's any solace as a Bears fan, it's that they are in rebuild mode. Like, they are not supposed to be good. And in fact, the 2 wins they have is probably above their quota. Like, is Matt Eberflus, hearing from the ownership, like the Dolphins guy, saying, "Hey, you're winning too many games over here. Let me slip you a couple stacks to make sure you lose." I'm not accusing anybody. No, I wouldn't do that. But if Ryan Poles had taken over the Vikings, would the Vikings be in rebuild mode also? Because remember, this almost happened. Ryan Poles was almost here. Can you guys look into your crystal ball and see like a different world if Ryan Poles takes over this team in Minnesota? Luke?
Yeah, tough question. I don't think so, honestly. And it's because of the quarterback. I think, he looked at Justin Fields as a window where you're going to get a 2-year minimum grace period and said, let's do it right. Let's start from scratch. Whereas maybe Kirk and the Vikes roster was still in kind of win now mode, at least, what a lot of people thought anyways, if you played your cards right. And remember, as bad as the Vikes cap was, heading in, the Bears was even worse. So even more reason to do what he did and just completely strip the whole thing down. But at the end of the day, no, I think personally, he probably would have rolled with the vets and kind of did what he would have had to do here in Minnesota, as far as similar to Kwesi, renegotiating a lot of those vet contracts and things like that, kicking the can down the road a little bit. But good question. Tough to say. I don't know.
Yeah. Arif?
I mean, I don't know exactly why Poles decided to pick Chicago over Minnesota. I would imagine that one of those reasons might be, that he had a little bit more
Money.
control over. Yeah, I mean, money might be a reason, right? But I think one of the reasons that it might be he had a little bit more control over the roster, right? If the owners are kind of telling the GM candidates, "Hey, we want to see what you can do with Kirk," that kind of tells you got to work with Kirk, right? And so, maybe, a Ryan Poles-led Minnesota Vikings team would have found a way to ship Kirk, right? So we would have a completely different, another rebuild moment, right? A completely different Minnesota Vikings roster, one that might be playing as well as the Bears are right now, just because they wouldn't have had a quarterback to work with. Or maybe we would have Kellen Mond at the helm, see what he could do, which, not a lot of people seem to be, including the rest of the league at this point, not a lot of people seem to be over-enthused by that prospect.
Yeah, Kirk is really the only domino that matters, because if you move on Kirk, and we have to remember how real this seemed. Like, the KOC was refusing in every interview to talk about Kirk's future, to commit himself to Kirk. Like, this was definitely on the table. It didn't happen.
The classic, he's currently under contract response. Yeah.
Yep, he's going to be in the building tomorrow, so yeah, we're excited to have him for now. But if Kirk had been dealt, then the dominoes fall. Then Daniil gets traded. Then you're not going to restructure guys like Kendricks and Thielen had their money moved down the road. You're not making some of those deals. They would definitely, I think.
And free agents like Harrison Phillips and Za'Darius Smith would not have been enticed to come over.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Good point.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
It really did revolve around Kirk. He was the linchpin. Now, if Kirk did come back, would they be where they are now with polls? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, I do think ownership has had influence here, and I think, Arif, you mentioned roster control. If polls heard from ownership in the interview process that, hey, we want to be competitive every year, we don't want to rebuild, maybe that to him was too high of an expectation. It was an unrealistic expectation, and he said, I'll go to the place where I'm going to have that grace period that Luke mentioned. That makes sense to me. That does make sense. And I think we probably know more now that the Wilfs don't want to rebuild. And it's not been said directly, but I think we suspect that that's their philosophy. And that's what Kwesi had to do, which might explain why polls did what he did. Just saying. Should have Ron Johnson here any moment. Big frog in my throat. Make sure to check out Amazon Fire and Roku apps for Locked On Sports Minnesota. It's a great viewing experience. On Amazon Fire and Roku, you get all of our programming. That's Superior Sports Talk, Minnesota Football Party, The Ron Johnson Show, and the postcast after Wild, Wolves, Vikings, and Twins games. Pour one out for Brandon Warren and Nash Walker. The postcast is over this year for MLB. They did like 150 of them for a team that completely quit down the stretch. Rest in peace, 2022 Twins. That was tough. As we await the arrival of one Ron Johnson, we also pour one out for his Gophers, who last lost on Saturday against Purdue. Very sad. And previewing the gambling segment, by the way, we have a new leader in the gambling segment. Remember, it's 1,000 mythical dollars. We make a pick against the spread and an over-under every week. And I've taken the lead. I've taken the lead by 65 cents. I lead Luke Braun, who lost a little money this week and then dipped just below me. So I'm 808.92. Braun is 808.27. Luke Inman had a tough week. Pour one out for Luke Inman. $200 lost on both of his bets. You lost about half your bankroll. You doing okay today?
I'm fine. We'll bounce back.
Okay.
We'll bounce
Optimist.
back. I'm not doing
Optimist.
good. I'm worried, actually. I'm freaking out. I don't like this. I don't like it.
And I earned the most money this week. I earned the most money this week.
That's true. He did.
Both as in terms of total dollars and a percentage of bankroll. So that should be acknowledged.
You're the only one that earned money. The rest of us lost money.
Right.
So
yes,
that helps. That's
accurate.
good.
Yeah.
You're on the comeback trail. Yep. Your overall record is 2-6. The rest of us are like 3-5, 3-4-1. So we're all on the struggle bus.
2-6? I mean, I can't talk.
2-6.
I just lost $400, but holy smokes. Okay. All right.
All right.
It was mostly one bad bet and then a bunch of small bets that also didn't work out.
I love it.
Arif, you've typically been a really good performer in this, so I am scared of you, like, going forward. I still think you're a threat, so I would love to bury you early. But what do you guys think about my suggested punishment for the loser? So at end of regular season, the loser will be videotaped going through a combine of the winner's choosing. It has to be outdoors, in the snow, in full football garb, and the drills you do are whatever we feel like we will make you do. And it will be posted online, and you will be ridiculed from that point on. Noodle on that. Think about that scenario as we bring in Ron Johnson here on the Minnesota Football Party. Good morning, Ron of the Ron Johnson Show. How you doing this morning?
I'm good. How's it going?
Hey, it's going all right. So why can't the Bears find the right quarterback? I mean, it's year after year, it's decade after decade, and Justin Fields, everyone's talking about him. We've been talking about him all week on your show. They just can't figure it out. What is it about that Bears organization?
I don't know if it's the organization as a whole. I mean, Rex Grossman got them to a Super Bowl. They try to fit some guys here and there. But at the end of the day, they tried the Jay Cutler experience. I think that was okay for a little bit, and then he, kind of fell apart. But honestly, I'm going to go to scheme. I think the Bears have been so predicated on defense for so long. The offense got overlooked. But if you look at, I mean, teams that went out and got their quarterback still couldn't win. When you look at the Lions, they had Matthew Stafford, who's a Super Bowl champion quarterback, but they couldn't win with Matthew Stafford. So honestly, it's like I'm starting to believe that winning a Super Bowl is truly like an experiment that has to go right. Like everything has to form and work right, because if you go back to the Bill Belichick's, they never really had like a true uh like number one receiver, other than Randy Moss when they tried that out and they still end up losing the Super Bowl to Eli Manning. You look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers a year with John Gruden. They had a great defense that Tony Dungy had built. They had Brad Johnson. They had Keyshawn, who didn't play that year due to like arguments with the team, and they went out and won a Super Bowl. So I think from a quarterback standpoint with the Bears, it's scheme. I truly believe it's scheme. I truly believe like if they were to go get a running back, because they haven't had a running back in a while, that when you say we have a true running game, and I think that's where they struggle. And then Courtney Cronin was on the Ron Johnson show this week, and she mentioned offensive line, like, and then Brock Vereen as well was on the Ron Johnson show yesterday, said the same thing, like offensive line, like Justin Fields doesn't have time to throw the ball, and the game's already fast, and then you have to speed it up because you're like, man, I really only have 2 seconds. It comes down to that, because you look at Ohio State, he had a great offensive line for college, and he did just fine. So I gotta believe it's offensive line play plus the lack of a running game is not allowing their quarterbacks to kind of take over.
Luke?
Yeah, Ron, everyone's just kind of banking on and leaning into the fact that, the Vikes offense and defense, they're struggling because they're brand new systems. And maybe it was foolish to think that, they were never going to hit the ground running, so to speak. Now it's great to see them win games in the meantime, for sure, but tough to say with confidence that it's probably sustainable at this point. How much of the offense and defensive struggles, just as a former player yourself in the league, do you think has to do with the new systems in place, the new verbiage, etc.? And how confident are you they're substantially going to get better as we continue to move forward? Or is there a chance, and I'm talking about maybe the defense specifically here, that maybe they're just not as good as we all expected to be? And guys like, Kendricks, Harrison Smith, Pat P, maybe they're just getting a little long in the tooth and just not the same guys we're used to seeing.
That is the longest question I've ever had in my life.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go with the first part. You're welcome. From the one exciting guy on the football party. I'm gonna start with the first part. So I'd say from an offensive standpoint, there is a lot of verbiage, but I think they are finding a way. So if you look at the Rams and Cooper Kupp, they forced the ball to Cooper Kupp, 20 targets, and they still couldn't really get the offense going. The year before that, he had OBJ, he had Cooper Kupp, and he had Van Jefferson. So he was able to facilitate and pass the ball around. Now it seems like with Allen Robinson, I don't know if they just don't get along or the play calling isn't working to like Allen Robinson's favor. It just seems forced. So when you think about the Vikings offense, Kevin O'Connell has that same mindset, but he also has to realize, like, you know what? I do have Justin Jefferson, but I also have Adam Thielen. I have KJ Osborne. I have Irv Smith. I have a running back, which the Rams never had, a Dalvin Cook or an Alexander Madison. Like Alexander Madison could go to the Rams right now and be the starting. And so when you think about that luxury to have two running backs that could both be starters for the Rams, I think Kevin O'Connell's trying to learn, like, what does this run game look like? How do we get to the run to then pass? And how do we pass to then set up the run? Like, what does that look like? And he's figuring it out every day. Like, okay, this is what I saw. This is how I can get Dalvin Cook going. The Bears have given up 183 yards on the ground a game. So if they don't run the ball against the Bears, they're not going to run the ball this season. This is definitely a team Dalvin Cook could have a 150-yard game against. Alexander Madison can pile on another 80 yards. And Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen might have a quiet day of 3 to 4 catches each. But, big plays here and there because of the play action. So I think this has to be a run game thing. I think the offense, they're figuring it out. Defensively, that's just a smack you in the mouth thing. And then if there's no gap integrity, or if you're in some exotic look where you have 4 guys outside of the guards, and we've seen that before with the linebackers inside but off the line, you're allowing the guard and the center to get upfield very fast, wall off the guys helping the tackles, and then go up quick. And now the run lanes are there. And then vice versa, when you play action off that, the linebackers have to respect it because they're like, crap, they just got 8 yards on us on this play, and it was 3rd and 9, so we have to respect it. And then they're running the play action, whether it's the deep over or the shallow behind a play action. That's I think where the defense is trying to figure it out. Like, what does this 3-4 really look like? How are we going to attack? At the end of the day, it comes down to 1st and 2nd down. It sounds real cliche, but they've got to get better on 1st and 2nd down so that they can continue to force those 3rd longs. Because when they're doing that, they're really good. But when they're in 3rd and 4 and less, they're not that good. And I think that's where, and I say not that good, it's just giving offenses a ton of plays to run. That's the issue. As far as the long in the tooth thing goes, because I know you asked a lot of questions, Luke, so I'm going to answer them all. As far as the long in the tooth thing goes, I'm still going to go with no. I think Harrison Smith is still one of the best safeties out there. I think Patrick Peterson can still cover. Now, is he a shutdown island corner anymore? Probably not, but in this scheme, he's definitely can play cover 2 man. He can play the deep third. He can play the deep quarter. He moves well. He still is running step for step with a lot of these receivers. Some of the double move stuff does get him. And he doesn't have that quick hip twitch like he used to, but I think he's just fine. And then Eric Kendricks, again, I think just still playing well. So I think the play is going to come from these D tackles. I think that's what we want to see, like the nose guard and D tackles. Like, can they start to Akeem Hicks this thing or Ndamukong Suh this thing? Like, have Aaron Donald it, create havoc to where they're just, even if they're not making the play, they're getting in there so fast, everybody's just off. And they're making the play jump or the quarterback is getting spooked. That's the things I think we need to see from the defensive line.
And I'll try to keep this question a little bit shorter then.
Yeah, we're almost out of time. My fault.
So the Vikings are 3-1. They certainly don't feel like a 3-1 team. And my question is whether that's going to be an area of concern, whether it's possible for a Vikings team to be kind of complacent. I remember when they were 5-0 in 2016 and then ended up with an 8-8 season. I think that there were a lot of deficiencies on that team that were pretty easy to see, but covered up by the fact that they were undefeated. Does it feel like that's a possibility here?
They don't seem like a 3-1 team to who? You? I don't know.
to a lot of people, not just me, Ron, not just me.
That's bad juju you throwing out there. I don't know they're a 3-1 team to me. Why? Because they lost to the only undefeated team in the NFL. They also beat a really good Saints team. They beat a Lions team who are literally probably 7 plays away from being 3-1 themselves. You look at the Packers, who are really good, and the Vikings beat them. So whether it was a fluke or not, game 1, they beat the Packers. This is a 3-1 team. I truly believe they are a good 3-1 team.
Okay, so Ron Johnson
the one
is
thing
complacent.
I'll say,
Got it.
I'm good. The one thing, this is what I'll say. The fact that the games are close and they're not dominating, people question that. Like, how sustainable? I know that was Luke's 15th question in that question. Is it sustainable? So I'm going to answer Luke again with Arif's question. I think it is sustainable to a point, because if they win the Super Bowl by a field goal, who cares if they go this entire season 11-6 and they ended up winning every game by a field goal? We can say the whole season, like, man, I don't know how they're doing this, but they're doing it. They go 11-6 and then they win the Super Bowl by a field goal, or they win an NFC Championship by a field goal. Who cares? Like, I think what this team is showing is they're resilient. They're not shutting down in big moments. They're able to bounce back. As PJ Fleck would say, I want to see them fail. And how do they react to the failure? Like, failing is okay, but being a failure and quitting is not. And so they failed. They've lost to the Eagles, and then they're bouncing back. They've given up big plays to the Saints. They missed an extra point where everybody in the old Vikings era, oh, crap, extra point miss. They're going to lose this in overtime. I guarantee it. You can see the tweets. You can see the comments. And the Vikings still won because their kicker had faith in himself, because the coaches had faith in him, and they bounced back. So I think the culture change for me is what makes me believe this 3-1 team is 3-1, and I'll take it.
I totally believe in this team, Ron. 3-1 through and through. I've got no doubts. Last one. We were debating this earlier in the episode. Who is the most impressive Viking through 4 games? Is it Justin Jefferson, or is it someone sneakier on this roster? Who stood out to you?
I'm going to go with, well, Justin Jefferson, I think, is an easy one, but also he's had some games where he got shut down, so I can't really say completely impressive. Like, I'm going to go sneaky with this one and go Cam Bynum. I think Cam Bynum, when we had him on the Ron Johnson show. If you haven't seen that, go back and watch. He talks about wanting to play to the field. So I actually watched that now. I watched that he's always trying to be the wide side safety because he wants to cover tight ends. He wants to cover the running back coming out the backfield. And so when you see that, because he's a former cornerback and he said it doesn't go away. And when you see him do those things, you're like, man, he is actually really eliminating some of these secondary tight end options, these secondary running back out the backfield options for the quarterback, the nickel stuff coming up and helping out the other receiver on the other side. So he's been really impressive for the fact that he hasn't missed tackles. He's shot the gap when he saw and read it and broke up a big play against the I think it was the Lions on that 4th down. Like Cam Bynum has been really, because we were just assuming Lewis Cine, it was his job. But that's why Lewis Cine couldn't get on the field, is because Cam Bynum has been good. Like, if I'm a DB coach, I can't just say I drafted him in the first round, get out there. It's like, well, damn, this dude is balling over here. Like, why would I take him out? He's on a heater. It's like asking the guy to get up from the poker table and he's hit pocket aces 7 times. Like, no, just, hey, stay. Your wife will be, she'll make it up to you later. Like, you'll make it up to her later after you win. Like, don't, like, it's like a guy with the dice. Never talk to a guy that's rolled 7 sevens. 77 sevens. If you don't remember the Dave Chappelle show, that was Ashy Larry. Ashy Larry once rolled 77 sevens. But then he spent it all on PCP and champagne. But that's the thing. Like, Cam Bynum is on a heater right now. You cannot. I mean, if Rocco Baldelli was Cam Bynum's coach, he would have taken Cam Bynum out, because we know if there's a no hitter, he's going to take the pitcher out. So leave Cam Bynum in. He's throwing a great game. He's playing a great game, and so he's my sneaky favorite that I think has been really positive because, again, he kept a first rounder off the field.
I like that take, Ron. I appreciate that. He's at 3 Ron Johnson, the Ron Johnson Show host, Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and the Roundtable on Fridays, and our guest every Thursday. Thanks, Ron.
Appreciate it.
See you, Ron.
See you, Ron.
Talk to you soon. Okay, before we gamble, how do we feel about the loser's punishment? Combine in the winter, in the snow?
I like it, and I'm sufficiently terrified of it. So
you should be.
Yeah,
that's good.
Actually,
I feel like Braun would be on board.
When you say NFL garb, does that mean someone's going to have to find pads, or how's that going to work out?
Yeah, we'll have to figure that one out. I think that helmet is a must. You have to learn, you have to carry your pads. I think jersey, so you look like a football player, and maybe some pants. Maybe not pads, because you're probably going to have like a coat on underneath. I think part of the humiliation is that you're going to have to try to do athletic things while wearing a lot of clothing.
Yeah, I think we got to go all in. We got to go Johnny Manziel Pro Day style and get the full garb, top to bottom on. The headbands,
I'll chase people around with a broom. Cleats. That's going to be,
yeah.
So long as I'm not the loser, it's going to be. I'm going to be.
There you go. I love it.
Around.
I love it. Yeah. No, I'm in. I like it, Sam. Very creative, pretty funny. Makes for great content. I'm in. Approved.
Yeah. I'm excited for it, and I guess I'm not. It will not be fun if I'm the loser, but it will be funny to me. I won't have to sweat. I won't have to be absolutely like devastated at what I'm about to do. Arif, you start. Minimum 50, maximum 500. You get one spread, you get one over-under, and you have 400 some odd dollars to work with.
All right, I wrote down which ones I want to bet, but I didn't actually write down who they were playing against. So give me 1 second. Okay, I think actually I don't love the spreads. I do want to highlight one that stood out to me. It's not a bet I'm taking. It's Steelers plus 14. That one against the Bills minus 14. I just think that one's really funny. Obviously the Steelers are playing a rookie quarterback against what could be the best team in the league. So I get why that spread is there, but that's very funny. I think I'm going to start with an over under though, and then I'll let the spread come to me, as it were, in the draft. So I don't understand how this is where it's at, but the Miami New York Jets over under is at 46. And I mean, Miami is probably going to start Teddy, is my guess. New York is probably going to start Zach Wilson, who like threw 2 picks, probably should have thrown 2 more. It's just like these are not like explosive offenses. So to have a league wide average over under is wild to me. So I'll take the under 46 at -110. I'm going to bet. God, I need to be aggressive to get out from under it, but that's tough. I hate over unders. I'm going to bet $350.
Ooh, minus
Let's
110.
go.
Yeah,
I
minus
love it. I love it.
Okay, so Arif, if you go into the negative, we are going to have to come up with some punishment for you.
With an
just so
additional,
you know
I
that.
understand. Yeah.
Okay.
He
willing to
understands the
take that risk.
consequences. He gets it. Yep.
So Luke Braun was responsible enough to send in his picks to me, and he would like me to go with Lions +3 at Patriots. Can we make sure, someone, that is still the line?
Yeah, I see 3 +3. Yep.
Okay, and what are the odds on it?
I think it's -136.
So Lions +3, it's +100 here on Bet Online.
Oh, maybe
Oh.
this is +136. Okay, +100 then.
Yeah, it's
And
plus
Braun is
100.
going to put $100 on it. That leads us to Sam Ekstrom. So I was going to do Lions Patriots over. Can't do that anymore. Braun took it out from under me, even though he's not here. I think I like the Seahawks. The way Geno Smith is playing, as bad as the Saints are right now, I'm going to take the Seahawks +5.5 to cover.
That's probably the best one. That's a good one.
The odds are -108, and I'm going to put $148 on it. And Luke, you get to pick 2.
Okay. Yeah. Arif kind of highlighted that Steelers-Bills game. The over-under is 46. I think the Bills will put up points. I think Kenny Pickett will spark a little bit more rejuvenation in that offense, even if they do get blown out, maybe some garbage points at the end. George Pickens is starting to heat up a little bit. I'm going to take the over in that Bills-Steelers game of 46, and I'm going to stay consistent. I'm going to go $200 again. And then coming back, I've been riding and dying with the Jaguars, and so far I've been dying. And now they play the Texans, and I'm seeing -7, so they're supposed to win by a touchdown. I love the Jags going into this season just in general. I thought Trevor Lawrence was going to be rejuvenated now that Urban Meyer was out, and Doug Peterson, he's got a real coach. 7 points is an awful lot. But I'm going to stay committed. I'm going to stay consistent. I'm going to go with the Jags -7. I don't know when the last time they've been favored by 7 points. I'm going to go with that one, and I'm going to stay consistent again. I'm going to go with $200. Jags, one more week, one more time. Daddy's due. Daddy needs a new pair of shoes. Come on. Jags -7. You'll have to help me out. I don't know what the odds are on that. -110, something like that?
-102. So, yeah,
Okay.
-102 is what I'm seeing. Okay, I've got to do an over-under for my second pick. This has been a little tricky for me this year. Never my strength. Over-under is usually an issue for me. How about the Eagles and Cardinals? I mean, that just screams high-scoring game in Arizona. Don't have to worry about the weather. Over 49. Eagles, Cardinals. And I will put $132 on it. Okay, that leads us to Luke Braun. Luke Braun, let's see, his second choice was Falcons, Bucks, under 48, and I think he gets it. Falcons, Bucks, under 48, $100, and the odds on that are a robust, got
to point out here,
dynamic.
I'm just on betonline.net. I see it at 46.5.
That is correct.
betonline.net/odds.
That is
So
correct.
I don't know how that works. I don't know if he still wants it. I don't know if he gave you a plan C in case one of them was picked. I don't know if we just roll with it, but
49ers, Panthers, over 38.5 is what he had. So what's that at?
Oh.
49ers, Panthers.
-115. -115.
But is it 38? Is it 38.5 still?
It is, yes.
yeah.
Okay. Well, let's do that. Over 38.5. 49ers, Panthers. All right, Arif, close us out.
All right. So I said I didn't like the spreads. You did take my top 2 spread picks, but because I'm not confident in them, it's not too big of a deal. I think I'm going to take the Chargers. I am going to take the Chargers minus 2.5 against the Browns. I actually do not understand why it's this close, which means that I am clearly missing something and I'm about to lose a lot of money. But I trust Justin Herbert more than
at least you understand.
Right? Yeah.
Going in.
I trust Justin Herbert more than I trust Jacoby Brissett. I like Jacoby Brissett a lot. And I think Herbert is more likely to get better than worse. I think Brissett's more likely to get worse than better. And these run games are just not that sustainable in terms of generating points. So minus 110, and I'm going to put in, I was going to put in 400. I'm going to put in $300.
$300 for Arif to close it out. Thank you, guys. Good picks. Best of luck this weekend. We close the show with our party fouls. Let's run it. I'm just going to revisit Kirk Cousins saying that he was empowered by wearing Christian Darrisaw's chain.
That's not a party foul.
I don't know. It was just it was like a nerdy foul. Like, Kirk Cousins, you are just an interesting individual. I think it's okay that he was given the chain. I just think that he's funny when he talks about it. And he's like a little boy seeing the world for the first time. The naivety is so adorable that it just doesn't belong in an NFL locker room.
What do you mean? Jalen Waddle's dance is to waddle. I think being endearing and adorable is the new meta in the NFL. Okay.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I'll go next.
Yeah.
Just so that Luke doesn't steal it from me, because I know that this could potentially be on his mind, but I'm going to go with the Gophers. You already mentioned it, Sam, but I was already going to go with the Gophers. Raising expectations, getting some votes even in the poll, and falling flat against Purdue. I guess it's bad to be ranked and go against Purdue. Would have been nice to have Purdue a little bit earlier in the schedule, but that's on the Gophers. They made a couple of mistakes, missed a couple of field goals, threw a couple of bad passes, couldn't get the run game going at all. I understand that Ibrahim was injured, but that is a great set of running backs that you have, or a really good offensive line. You can't get the running game going against Purdue. That's rough, man. I cannot believe this. The division, or whatever we're calling it, is wide open, and you just to fall flat. Ugh.
That's a good one. You definitely did steal mine, so I'm kind of winging one right now.
Sure.
Half the team making fun of Christian Darrisaw because he's on some logs. Come on, go easy on him, man. But I'm going to go with, last week I went with the guy who dropped the Aaron Judge home run ball, Mr. Lasagna, I think his name was. Today I'm going to go with the guy who, you would think I would go with the guy who caught it, because it turns out he's already getting like a $2 million offer. It turns out he's works for this $1 billion hedge fund. It's like, okay, rich get richer. But
really?
That's not not the angle I'm going. Did you see the guy, the fan in the stands, who jumped out of the stands to try to catch that home run ball and wasn't even close? I'm talking, we're 15 yards away, and for some reason he jumped out of the stands. We're talking a 15-foot drop. I don't even know if he's okay. Somebody's got to do a welfare check on that guy. But if you haven't seen the video, like most of my party fouls, you got to go back and check it out.
It's good. Rough. I have a theory on it. So you know how there was a railing, right? And then there was I assume it was the bullpen or some kind of open area down below. So if you
thought that he was okay,
he saw the ball flying toward that direction, and it was very close. If it was 5 feet lower, that ball is rattling around in that area.
Thought it bounced around.
The first
and
one
scoop it up.
to jump into
down
the
there.
pit.
Yeah.
Then he's going to probably get the ball. I see the logic, assuming that was his plan.
Well, knowing that's not how it ended up panning out, it's pretty hilarious now. Again, the drop-off's huge, but you got to go check it out. It's funny.
Yes.
Yeah. Broken bones, you think? You think that guy got a couple of broken bones?
I think Vegas has it at 1.5 over/under broken bones for sure.
Would you
That's
take
a long drop.
Would you take a risk of 1.5 broken bones for the chance for the $2 million ball?
Absolute $2 million ball. Absolutely. I think we all would, wouldn't we? Come on.
It's on my brain. Yeah.
Yeah.
Certainly it covers the deductible, I think. So I should be good.
Buy a new
And you can
ankle, buy a
sue
new
the
leg, whatever
ballpark.
I need. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
there you
railing
go.
wasn't high enough. What are you guys doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, you need more padding. Game predictions, Vikings and Bears. I need a final score. Arif?
What Vikings are favored by 7? I'll take them by 10. It's going to be low scoring. Let's say it's 20-10. I don't know.
Luke?
Yeah, over under 44. Bears offense stinks. So just watch Justin Fields throw for 300 yards, run one in, pass for 2. I think it's a little bit more high scoring than we're all thinking it's going to be. Dalvin Cook hopefully gets cooking here. I'll take the Vikes by 6. I'll go 30-24.
33-19. Vikings win. Weird scores only. Thanks for watching the Minnesota Football Party this week. Luke Braun should join us from Europe next week, or back from Europe, I should say. Arif Hasan, Luke Inman. I'm Sam Ekstrom. Check us out on Twitter. Like, comment, and subscribe to the YouTube channel, Locked On Sports Minnesota. And check out the postcast after Sunday's game with Luke Braun and yours truly. Matt DeBritz directed the show. Thanks for watching and listening. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll talk to you on Monday.